Thanks for tuning in to My Valley, His Victory, hosted by me, Mackenzie Smith, where I interview Christians who love the outdoors and have walked through valleys in their lives. In a world of highlight reels and surface-level relationships, we all have faced hardships. I believe our experiences can be encouraging to others if we have the courage to be vulnerable. 2 Corinthians 1 says, "The Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God." My goal is to inspire you to come to the Creator through His creation and connect you with Christians who have been through similar experiences. I pray that this podcast encourages you if you are in a valley and pushes you to share how God has turned your past valley into His victory. If you enjoy these episodes, please take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform and follow this podcast on Instagram. If these episodes have been impactful for you, or you know someone that would benefit from one of these episodes, please feel free to share it with a friend. Your support means the world to me. Thanks so much for being here. On today's episode of My Valley, His Victory, we have Julie George, also known as Mountain Goat. She lives in Georgia with her husband of 29 years. They have 4 grown children ranging in ages 27 to 21. In 2020, Julie participated in the Revelation Wellness outdoor leadership program called RevWild and later became a leader for them for future RevWild events. She also helps shepherd the RevWild event called Rim to Him in the Grand Canyon. She has a local hiking ministry called Hiking on Purpose, which started in 2021. Julie says, "When you walk, you talk, and the friendships that have grown from this group have been so sweet." She really loves the way God ministers to people in the outdoors. She received the position as the 2024 Trail Chaplain and received sponsorship to hike the full length of the Appalachian Trail, with the main goal of simply sharing the love of Jesus. Thanks so much for being with us today, Julie.
Thank you, Kinsey. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so go ahead and just share with our listeners more about you and about Julie and about the AT and all of the things.
I can do that. So honestly, I am a 53-year-old mom, 4 kids. I am a teacher by trade, homeschooled my kids. And although our family hiked, just for fun growing up, backpacking and ministering to people outdoors was never really on my radar. And I think that that's an encouragement to a lot of people who are older, who want to go outside and they may think that they're not quite they're not the young ones anymore. Let me encourage everybody that God can use us even as we're getting older, and give us new visions as we change up our lives. So yeah, my kids are all grown and gone, 27 all the way down to 21. And so I started really spending a lot more time outdoors as they were getting older and in college, and happened upon this thing called RevWild, which was a Revelation Wellness little sister organization, and thought, well, let's try this. So I participated in that, loved it so much, went back, and now I'm one of their leaders for their Colorado trip, and I also help with their Grand Canyon trip, rim to rim, in a day. And so I get to do that. And from that spurred my hiking ministry called Hiking on Purpose. We're mainly a day hiking group. Right now, the Lord has given us a bunch of women. So right now it's a women's group, but we're always open to young, college ministry. We're open to couples. We're open to men attending. But right now it's mainly a women's hiking ministry, and it has been beautiful. Absolutely amazing. Taking people out into just doing a day hike. A couple times a year, we'll do something harder. We've gone to California and done the Trans-Catalina Trail, Art Lobe Trail, multiple other like short weekend trips that we'll take. And then last year, just for fun, a friend of mine and we didn't have a whole lot that were willing to do this because it was hard. So the hardest one we've done so far was like the Foothills Trail, which meanders through South Carolina and North Carolina. That was like 78 miles. And then, so last year I was like, let's challenge ourselves and do something harder. So one person signed up for this event with me, but we did the Appalachian Trail Georgia, just to Franklin, North Carolina. So it was 110 miles. And we were like, this was great. And we came home and people thought we were super cool. And actually, we went out there just for each other and for God to speak to us. But what was really cool is on that trip, just for 9 days, actually God was able to work on the trail as well. Like I made friends of thru hikers that I followed the whole time, and they ended up finishing the trail, which was so awesome to celebrate with them. And then we've kept in touch. I'll come back to that in a minute, but it's just been super cool of that opportunity. And I never really even saw that as a ministry, but it became one. And then through RevWild, a friend of mine, that's how we met, sent me an application for the 2024 chaplaincy program. And I was like, what is this? Like, I had never even heard that there was someone being put on trail to talk about Jesus. And I was like, this is cool, but they're not going to want, a little lady, homeschool mom, they're not going to want that. And I mentioned it to a friend of mine who I hike with. And she was like, Julie, if you don't at least throw your name in the pot, you're crazy. So just do it. So I went home that night after talking to her, and I just literally vomited out multiple pages of my bio and how I know Jesus and how I've seen Jesus work in the wilderness, and just sent it. Didn't edit it, didn't do anything. Didn't even tell my husband I did it. Didn't tell him. I'm like, why worry about that? I'm just putting my name in. Well, long story short, I get an email that I'm a finalist, and I was like, oh my goodness. So then I actually had to rip the Band-Aid off and tell my husband what I had just done. That was an interesting interaction, but he was so supportive. Actually, I sat my husband down and I said, hey, look, I'm about to tell you something. And he was like, oh no, what have you done? And I said, would you just take 2 days and pray about this? Because the initial answer might not be the real answer. So could you just do that? And he honored me with that. And I'm so grateful. He said, yeah, I support you in this. And so I got this chaplaincy role. And the object of this position is to hike my hike of the Appalachian Trail, 2,197.4 miles, Georgia to Maine, Maine to Georgia, flip-flop, however I chose to hike it. I chose to go northbound the traditional way because, in my opinion, 80% of hikers go that way. And it was important for me to be with the hikers because that was my job. But really just hike my hike and share the love of Jesus. And that didn't look like having church service. It didn't look like me, cramming the Bible down people's faces. It just looked like loving them, getting to know them, talking to them, being joyful when you don't feel like being joyful, and being forgiving, merciful, and tenacious. Those are the examples and the words that I wanted to say to anybody who I encountered. And so I got this position. I started March the 1st, and I finished August the 8th. So I did it in 161 days and met amazing, amazing people. So, yeah.
Yeah. Congrats. That's a huge accomplishment. And man, you're just off trail. I mean, I feel like you've been home for like 3 weeks.
It's true. Yeah. It's weird because there's a part of me, like I'm back to normal. Like I'm back to reality, what I call the real world. And there's a real thing called post-trail depression. It's real. And it's almost like you go through a grief period. And it's really important for me as I quote unquote grieve the trail, for me too, like I've been really teary I tear up when I talk about my friends. I tear up when I talk about my stories, and I'm allowing myself to process that. I'm allowing myself to shed tears when I feel like it. And so, but there's this weird part of my brain that feels like it didn't happen. Like you're back to business as usual. But then there's this other part of my brain that says, but it did happen. Like the incredible things that I have been able to do and the incredible epic moments they're still there. Like, and it's like you want to scream to the world. Matter of fact, I went to a restaurant, and it was a restaurant that my husband and I go to quite frequently. And I went up to the cashier, who I've seen a lot, and she doesn't care. But it was so funny. I had to tell her, like, I just got off the Appalachian Trail. And she looked at me and she knew exactly what it was. But why did I do that? But it's just like, I'm trying to process that and allow it to happen. So, I'm fresh off the trail, and it's going good.
So before you hiked the AT, what was the longest trail you had done before?
So the longest that I had done prior to the AT would have been the 110 miles on the AT the year before. Then the second would have been the 78 miles of the Foothills Trail, which a lot of ATers actually will get on the Foothills Trail as a training week. It's about 78 miles. So you can do it in, easily in like 6 days. But it's challenging. So it kind of sets you up for success in Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee.
Yeah.
So this was the first. I had never really done this before. And I remember being in the Smokies and looking out at this beautiful, the mountain range was amazing. And all of a sudden this realization came to me of, oh my goodness, I've got to hike all that. Like the Appalachian Trail is legitimately the Appalachian Trail. Oh my goodness, I'm hiking all these mountains. I think that's when it really hit me of the longevity that I was going to have to, this was going to take a while, and to just get ready to walk a long way.
Yeah. So exciting and so cool. Bucket list hike for a lot of people. And man, you did it. You completed it. Kudos to you. And man, celebrate your heart out, but definitely grieve your heart out too, because it's a definitely change of pace and a change of life. And, there's so much simplicity out there that we don't have in our everyday life that can be hard, man. Mm-hmm. But it's cool because I feel like oftentimes when we're on trail, it's like, man, this is what life was supposed to be like. Like, you just focus on the people in front of you, the things in front of you, the day in front of you.
Amen to that. Oh my goodness. Yes. I have said this, and I've heard so many people say that. The simplicity of it all, just the goal for the end of the day, and putting boots to the ground and just walking. And I think that's what I grieve the most, is whether it was the climb or the descent or even the mountaintops, the time that I was able to spend with the Lord was just so beautiful. I mean, just so, so beautiful, of falling into the arms of Jesus all the time, for listening to my praise and worship and being able to dance like David, that was one of the most beautiful things. And towards the end of the trail, you're getting, when you're getting tired and you're like, okay, I'm ready to go home. I remember making the comment that I was so excited to get back to my church and worship collectively. And the first Sunday that I was in church after summiting Katahdin, I felt completely different. That, I wish I had the worship in the wilderness. I wish I had that mountain experience of looking out and just praising God, and He's King of it all. And it was funny because I'm like, I was trying to mentally put myself back to that beautiful moment of just constantly being with Him and trusting Him. Yeah, I love being out there. God does His thing in the wilderness for sure.
Yeah, that's so cool. So cool. So obviously, this was your job in a way, to be out there, but would love for you to share with us a little bit more about kind of how the outdoors plays a role specifically with your relationship with Christ without maybe the job function. So if you could separate those two in any way.
Yeah. So I think the on mission, I didn't get paid for this or anything. It was just supported. It was in, they paid for my gear and my food, but but for me, I saw it as being on mission. And actually I read the book Appalachian Trails, which just kind of walks you through pre-trail, during the trail and post-trail, and how to mentally rev up to get ready for this. And so I wrote down my goal, my vision, mission, and values of what am I going to do on the Appalachian Trail. And I actually did use the word, I'm going on mission. Like this is, and I think that focus for me really helped me when things got really hard, when the trail was really hard, or I felt, away, separated from my family and things like that. So for me personally, so I started the trail, and I would having my quiet time. I would have my quiet time as I walked. So I listened to podcasts. I listened to podcasts, and there was a verse that stood out to me at the beginning of the trail. And it's Ephesians 3:14-19. I fall to my knees and I pray to the Father, the creator of everything in heaven and on earth. I pray that from his glorious, unlimited resources, he will empower you with inner strength through his Spirit. Then Christ will make his home in your hearts as you trust in him. Your roots will grow down into God's love and keep you strong. And may you have the power to understand, as all God's people should, how wide, how long, how high, and how deep his love is. And may you experience the love of Christ, though it's too great to fully understand. And then you'll be made complete with all the fullness of life and power that comes from God. Those verses were like, they were like my key verses when I started the trail. And initially, that's how I saw the reason I was going out there. It wasn't really to hike the trail. It was to be with the people. It was to get to know the people, to focus in on the people. And so these verses were all about those people. And as I met them, I started thinking, okay, these verses, I'm praying this, that my friends that I'm meeting will be empowered through his Spirit, that they will know how much God loves them. But to be honest, to answer your question, God did that for me. He radically changed me. I fell to my knees and worshiped the creator of everything in heaven and on earth. He empowered me unbelievably with inner strength through his Spirit. I'll be honest. I'm 5'1" on a good day. And I got through the entire Appalachian Trail. And never once did I use KT tape. Never once did I get a blister until Maine and that river walking. I had to cross, all the water crossings. I got a little blister on my heel. Yeah, I got one little blister on my heel. In 5 months. So God totally cared for me on trail. I had so many people praying for me. And I specifically asked, for me personally, my biggest prayer was sure-footedness, because it takes one twisted ankle, one fall,
Yep.
and I'm done. And I had to face that reality back in the Smokies. I remember lifting my hands up to the Lord and saying, this whole story of the Appalachian Trail is your story. If the story includes me being injured and hurt and having to get off trail, I will drink of that cup.
Yeah.
But if you can see and make my story a story of completion, and it will be to glorify you, then would you do that? Because and he did. He totally gave me sure-footedness. Yet did I fall? Every day. Did I twist my ankle? Of course I did. But it was never anything that took me off the trail. And so the Lord physically answered Ephesians 3:14-19. But not only did he answer it physically, but oh my goodness, what he did to show how wide, how long, how high, and how deep his love is for me personally was incredible. I was sharing with a friend of mine. There was one, we were in, it was more than likely, it was the Whites. And the Kinsmans were really hard. And I was super, super nervous about hiking the Kinsmans. And I remember one point literally hanging with my fingers in the rock crevice and not being able to see where my feet were going to land. And I was going to have to let go and just kind of fall for a second. And that's hard when you've got a pack on. I mean, it throws your balance off. And I remember, I think I even have it on video, of just saying, okay, Jesus, I'm letting go. And I did. I let go and I landed. Praise the Lord. I'm fine. But that was so, that physical symbolism was so accurate of my spiritual life on trail, of letting go and just letting him take it. And he did. He did.
Yeah. I think it's so cool that you came with the posture of, whether this is the story or whether this is the story that you have in front of me. Like, I know that it's going to glorify you in some way. And I know that it's what you want out of this. And so I'm fine with either. Because I think so often we go to God and we pray and we're like, hey, can you help us get through this thing? And it's like, what if that wasn't his will? Then you set yourself up for disappointment in a way.
Yeah. Disappointment.
If something does happen.
You're exactly right. Disappointment, anger at God because he didn't come through the way you think he's going to come through. And honestly, I met so many amazing people on trail, believers on trail, whose story was not a story of completion. And that stinks. And my heart aches for them. Even today, my heart aches for sweet people like Scar, who loves the Lord and has wanted to do this her whole life. And she broke her foot. Yeah. And then she waited 12 weeks. And then she was like, I'll just flip flop and I'll start at Katahdin and work my way down after it heals. And the Lord blessed me and I was able to pass by her in the 100-mile wilderness. And I was so excited for her and I got to pray with her. And I'm like, just please let her get through it. And her story was a story of no. Yeah. She broke, and her foot was not healed, and she re-injured it, and now she's off. Yep. And that's part of her story. And my prayer is that she can glorify God through that story.
For sure.
And so that's just one example. I can name two handfuls full of people in the same situation.
Yeah.
But praise God, my story was a story of yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to use it.
Yeah. I love that. So you did a huge trail, a lifetime accomplishment. And it sounds like, you get out into the mountains often. What advice would you give to someone who's trying to connect with God through nature, who maybe lives in a big city or just doesn't have these huge mountaintop experiences?
Yeah. I have to say, number one, be still. Just get still. even on trail, as I was hiking, my mind, even though my feet were moving, my mind was still. And to listen to the Lord, look around you and see, where is God working? Who is God placing in your life? And then I would also say, love. Really love the people that God has obviously ordained to be a part of your life, because you can make a difference. You can make a difference in their world. It doesn't matter if you're out in nature or not. Love others. I think this was one of the biggest impacts on me on the trail. Loving others, being still, listening to nature, but listening to others people's story. I don't think I've ever really been a good listener. I think I've been one of those people that as I listen, I'm starting to think about what's my next response. And I realized that if you really listen, look in their eyes, you're going to hear their heart, not just what the words that they're saying, but hearing their heart. And then in response to that, sharing joy and being positive. People don't have enough joy and positivity in their lives. And I think that that's Jesus. I think Jesus wants us to do that. He wants us to radiate that. God's in the business of change and transformation. I'm not. But I can love and I can share joy and positivity, and then let Jesus be in the business of changing people's lives. And so I would have to say that would be the most practical way to connect.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Those are definitely good points. And I know I'm thinking about that. Am I really a good listener, or am I just coming up with the response? Because I know I'm very guilty of that sometimes. So I know it's a good reminder for me. So real quick, before we get into the meat of the podcast, I wanted to ask this earlier and I totally forgot, but how did you get your trail name? Where did that come from? Mountain Goat. Tell us that story.
Okay. So Mountain Goat is unfortunately one of the most popular Appalachian Trail names. It's like in the top, I think like 150 or something, because I researched it. But the good thing is I was the only mountain goat on trail that consistently, there was one dude ahead of me named Mountain Goat, and I met him, but he wasn't using Mountain Goat as his trail name. So, okay. So I just had to preface all that to say Mountain Goat of 2024 is me, but,
Mountain Goat 2024.
Yeah. There's always going to be one, but I'm Mountain Goat for 24. But no, I got my name back in 2020 when I was going through RevWild. We were on break. So RevWild is an outdoor leadership program.
Yep. Our listeners should be a little familiar because we had Chuck on. So
great. Okay. So that's it. And so I went through the program, and one afternoon we were out in Colorado in the Collegiate Peaks, and we were taking a break. I was exhausted, tired. I went in my tent. I had the vestibule open, and I was so tired. And then I looked out my vestibule. We were right at Granite Mountain, literally granite. That's all it was. And I thought, why am I lying here in my tent? I can do this when I'm home. So I got out of my tent and I started just climbing up all these granite rocks. And I hiked and I hiked and I hiked, and I got up to what I was comfortable with because, the elevation was getting pretty high up there. And so I just stopped and I spent time with a marmot and God. And we just hung out. And then all of a sudden, I could hear way down where the tenting and our camping spot was, our leader was calling us back. for our next activity. And I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to get back down there this quickly? So I just hightailed it as fast as I could down the mountain. Again, God gave me sure-footedness because I was able to get down, sweat pouring off of me. I made it in time. And they were like, where have you been? And I pointed way up at the top. And I was like, I went up there. And they're like, oh my goodness, you're a mountain goat. And it stuck. Now, fast forward to last year when I was on the Appalachian Trail, just for the Georgia section. I was sitting around the fire with these new people that I had met. And we were and when you're in Georgia, you don't know anybody. So you're like, oh, hey, what's your name? And it got around to me. And I said, oh, my name's Mountain Goat. And there was a girl sitting beside me, and she said, oh, greatest of all time, goat. And I'm like, absolutely not. I am definitely not the greatest of all time. Although I do know who is the greatest of all time, which was a great turning. It was a great spin on that. But I thought about that for a while. I don't want to ever be a goat. Like, I'm not. I'm not anything special or important. I'm a normal, average person. And I'm like, how can I spin this goat? And really, I'm a girl on the AT. I'm a girl on a trail.
So cute.
Sharing the love of Jesus. Yep. And actually, God, it was on the AT with me. So I was able to spin it pretty well. So Mountain Goat has stuck with me, and hopefully I will always be Mountain Goat.
I love that.
Yeah, I will further that a little bit. So as we were in Maine, and my little tramily, it was 5 of us going through the 100-mile wilderness together. And we had pretty much made a pact that we were going to finish together. And one of my friends, his name is Rex, and he said, as soon as we get off trail, I'm going to call everybody by their real names. And I looked at him and I said, absolutely not. And he was like, why? And I said, okay, here, listen, I have 4 children. They are the only 4 people in the entire world who have been blessed enough to call me mom, right? So I don't want them calling me Julie. I want them calling me by my given name to them, which is mom. Mm-hmm. And I said, and there are just a few select people that have hiked this Appalachian Trail with me that know me as Mountain Goat. You and I have been given the gift to call each other by our trail names. I'm like, I want to forever be known as Mountain Goat to you guys. And so that it stuck. So hopefully I'll be Mountain Goat forever.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's a good way to look at it. And I like that you said that, like, there's only so many people that have the right to call me that. And it's special. And why go back to something that doesn't fit naturally?
Yep.
Okay, so switching into the title of this podcast, My Valley, His Victory, would love for you to share with the listeners a valley or a season of wilderness that you went through in your life and just what God maybe taught you or prepared you for in that season.
Yeah. This was, I appreciate the fact that you asked me this question ahead of time so I could prepare for this because we all go through valleys. We have all experienced church hurt that has radically changed us. We have all gone through valleys in relationships, marriages, children, family, all of it. And I want to specifically focus on just the valley experience I had on the Appalachian Trail first, because I think we all go through this valley, and it's the valley of the pressure to perform. When I first started on trail, I was hyper-focused on, as chaplain, I want to be used by God. I want to be out there, but I didn't know what it looked like. there wasn't any, it wasn't like you go out there and you hold church services. It wasn't like they gave you a booklet and said, okay, this is what I want you to do on trail. There wasn't any set program or anything. It was basically hike your own hike and share the love of Jesus. And I'm like, okay, Jesus, what does this look like for me? And honestly, pretty much all the way through Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Smokies, I really had a hard time of what does that look like? The pressure to perform, I beat myself up. And it was a valley. Like, I can't tell you the amount of tears I shed crying out to God, because I felt like I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't saying enough. I wasn't being who God was wanting me to be. And that's a huge valley that I think all of us experience in some respect, because we think that as Christians, we have to be on this certain level, or we have to say these certain things. And the pressure that we put on ourselves, it wasn't pressure from anyone else. It was pressure I put on myself. These expectations that I'm supposed to, people are going to get saved, or, we're going to have baptisms, or we're going to, I'm going to have radical transformations, and I'm going to, wait. Did you hear the word that I said so many times in that? I. And the Lord really had to work on me. And he was like, daughter, I love you. I chose you for this moment. Quit putting so much pressure on yourself to perform, for you to change people, for you to, save people. You don't change people. You don't save people. And I really don't need you to perform. Stop it, daughter. Simply tell your story. Your story. Simply love them. I, God, harvest the seeds that you plant. It's my job. However he sees best, and whenever he sees best, let go of it. So the valley experience, I think, that I had on the AT was this low point of feeling like I was not good enough. And when I finally released not being good enough and let it go, that's when the joy of the Lord came in. That's when a heart that could see people for what they really were in a good way, like all the goodness that my friends that I met on trail had, and the words that I feel like the Lord wanted them to hear. The pressure was released. And so then not only was I able to feel his joy within, but all it did was radiate out. So, and the love that I felt from my Heavenly Father, all it did was radiate outward. And that's what people on trail needed. That's what they needed. Yeah. So I would have to say that was probably that was the valley experience. That was the hard lesson for me, of just letting it go. Physically, every day is hard on trail. Every day is hard. So I had multiple valley experiences of just putting one foot in front of the other. There were a number of times, specifically one day in the Smokies, I felt like I can't put one foot in front of the other. I can't. But with peanut M&Ms and Jesus, I made it to my shelter.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. That's actually probably a whole thing in itself. Peanut M&Ms and Jesus. That's what got me there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mine's a Nerds gummy clusters, so I understand.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think you're so right that so many people in some capacity can relate to the pressure to perform. I know I know multiple people that have as well. And I think it's something we definitely all go through, like I said, in some capacity or another. So you said, you kind of spent this first section of the trail in that season of what can I do? What helped you like tangibly make that switch in your head? Did it happen just one night through prayer? Like, were you reading scripture? Like what, over the course of that time, like what helped flip that mentality?
For sure, it was just the Lord consistently reassuring me that I was out there. And one of the multiple ways he reassured me, one, it was the people that I was around. I remember one time I came upon some of my friends. They had stopped and were filtering water. And I came up on them. And to be honest, I was hangry. It was time for lunch. I was hungry and just wanted to get to my stopping point where I was going to stop and have lunch. I think it was like a summit or something. And I was just on a mission to get there. And I passed by them and my friend looked at me and she was like, "Hey, Mountain Goat, like, you okay?" And it caught me off guard. And I said, yeah, why? And she says, "You just don't look like you don't seem as happy as you normally do." And that was the Lord right there, whispered to me, "They're watching. They're watching." And I promised myself then and there that I was going to do my absolute best. It didn't always happen, but to do my absolute best to be joyful on trail. I wanted them to see Mountain Goat is joyful. Why is Mountain Goat joyful? Because she has Jesus.
Yep.
I was unbelievably blessed with tons of resources and support. And I actually had a friend of mine on trail say, "We like hiking with Mountain Goat because good things happen." And I heard that and that was God saying, "See, girl, I got this. I got this. Just be you and shine a light. Be joyful. Love these people and tell your story."
Yeah.
So that was confirmation for me. So as I kept going, I kept being joyful. I even had one friend say, "Oh my gosh, I can't hike with you for long because you're just too perky." But I took that as a compliment because that meant I was doing what God was calling me to do. So that was how I was able to kind of slowly, progressively listen to my Father and let it go.
Yeah, definitely. So you've talked a lot about allowing God to use your story and to just share your story and kind of allow God to work through that. What piece of advice would you give to somebody who maybe has a story to share, but really gets stuck behind like shame or, something in that story that keeps them from sharing it?
I know exactly what to say in this because on trail, women take up about maybe 30, maybe this year 40%, but no, I'm going to say maybe 30% of the people on trail are women. And I've gotten to know so many men, especially. But I think, and the Lord told me early on that everybody that's on trail is out there for a reason. And they're looking for it to change them. me included. And people are on trail because they're going through some type of transition, most of them, be it a job change, death, divorce, finishing school, in between school, but they're all in some form of transition. They're all looking to be changed. And I think that especially these men that are on trail looking for change, there's one thing that the Lord really spoke to me about. And I really tried hard to say this to so many of them because I loved them all. The past does not define your future. I would grab them by the shoulders, look them in the eye, and tell them, the past does not define your future. And especially to my guy friends, one thing they never hear enough is that they're a good man. They're good. The past does not define their future. You are a good man. Now go. Be that good man and trust Jesus. And it makes a difference. Actually, I had a friend from last year that I said those words to him last year. And it wasn't planned. It just was, because God said he needs to hear this right now. And fast forward all the way to Maine. So just like not even a month ago, he shows up in Maine at a hostel where I was staying the night. And he came in and he said, "Hey, is this Mountain Goat?" And I turned around, I squealed, and I hugged this young guy's neck. And we sat down and we talked. And he said, "I remember those words you said to me. The past does not define your future. You are good. Now go and be good for Jesus." And he has. And he told me, he said he found God on the trail. And what's beautiful, even more, is that the Lord changed his life, not by my words, but because he sought out God.
Yeah.
But when he was telling me those words, we were sitting at a kitchen table at a hostel, and there were multiple other young men who were sitting there, and they heard this. So now the seed has been planted in 2024 and is moving forward. So really, it all boils down to the past does not define your future. Now go and do good with Jesus.
Yeah. Such good words. That's, such good words and such a special story. And I love what you said at the end there, like you were sitting around a table and other people were listening. And I think so often we're just focused on the person in front of us and we don't even realize that other people are listening. And so I think that's just cool because like you never know. I think so often we focus on the seeds that we like intentionally plant. But it's like, man, there's a lot of other seeds that are happening. Are they good seeds or are they bad seeds?
Yeah.
And like you're saying, you know, people were watching you on trail. People were listening to you say this. Like those are all seeds. And so I think that that's why it's really important to be mindful and to, you know, like you said, be focused every day about sharing, you know, showing your light because you never know who's listening and you never know who's watching.
It's true. It's true. And I failed. I failed.
We all do every day.
Yeah, I failed. But I'm telling you, the Lord just kept he just kept pushing that button every time that reminding me, stay tenacious, keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Julie, this has been an absolute pleasure. And I just thank you so much for hopping on, and thank you for the time that you served on the Appalachian Trail and all those seeds that you planted. I know that God will definitely be harvesting some of those. And just thank you for sharing your story and willing to share. For those listening who maybe want to follow along with you or connect with you, where can they find you?
So I'm on social media, Mountain Goat Hikes on Facebook and Instagram. I have a little YouTube that has all my AT stuff. And it is Mountain Goat Hikes with an underscore in between each word. And I did weekly updates, not daily, but I did weekly updates on trail. And in each one of those, I give a little word of what the Lord's teaching me. So there's all throughout, there's all kinds of hopefully good nuggets that you can get from that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you again so much for being here and just for sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of My Valley, His Victory. If you or someone you know are interested in being on this podcast, please email myvalleyhisvictory@gmail.com.